Welcome to another adventure with HiddenIncaTours.com. The landscape of Nazca in Peru is largely desert, but there is agriculture. Here we see modern agriculture, and coming up you will see these mysterious holes which were created 1500 to 2000 years ago. Right there. The water is still running after 2,000 years, which is quite amazing, and its origin is in the Andes, far to the east. There are a series of underground rivers which travel from the Andes down and enter into the Pacific Ocean, and it's in this desert landscape that the ancient Nazca, or possibly the previous culture, the Paracas, were able to access this water for irrigation, for drinking, and for bathing. What you can see now there are two streams that separate, and here we have access via these amazing Puquio wells. They have, of course, been reconstructed. They were abandoned at least 500 years ago with the arrival of the Spanish conquistadors. In all, there are supposed to be 42 of them that are still relatively intact and functioning, but 500 plus years ago, there could have been hundreds, if not thousands of them. They're concentrated in what were agricultural and urban centers, so as for the people to have access to this cool and quite clean running water. You can see in the background, which is where the Andes would be in the distance. It shows the ingenuity of an ancient people living in quite a desert landscape. In fact, Nazca only gets about half an inch to 1 inch of rain a year. So if it wasn't for the underground water that is still traveling to this day, life in this area would be impossible. And this shows you the system itself. Again, the fact that there are two streams that separate, and how the ancient Paracas or Nazca people were able to tap into these systems is unknown. But again, it shows the ingenuity of ancient people living in a relatively hostile area, that they were able not only to survive, but in fact to thrive. At Hidden Inca Tours, we visit these sites every time we go to Nazca, so please check upcoming tours, and that will give you a chance to join us and explore not only the Puquio wells, but also, of course, to fly over the Nazca system by plane, and the lesser known Palpa figures and geoglyphs. And on my YouTube channel, there are approximately 800 other videos you can watch.
But anyway, masonry mark, I'll just say, yeah, it's just brute strength, manpower, and tedious chipping away at the stone. You would think it would take them, whatever, weeks just to do one little stone, like one big stone, I should say. But the whole thing of why those things are really there is still a mystery, and then you have the knobs too. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Brian? What's your what would be your you got any explanation for that?
Well, like David says, literally in the 21st century, the modern archaeological explanation is that those pock marks were for shoving a tree trunk to help lift it,
right?
And
lift it up.
Yep, shape it, bring it back down to fine tune it.
And lift it up again, fine tune it a little bit more, drop it, keep lifting it, dropping it. But you'll notice that not all the stones have this either. Right. It's on maybe 10% of the stones. And other stones have, instead of that, a knob coming out, okay? and others just don't have any of that at all. You know, whenever you're working, in my mind, with 100-ton blocks of stone, 50-ton blocks of stone, Baalbek and stuff are 1,000-ton blocks of stone. Again, the mainstream's always like, well, it's just brute force and manpower, and you just get so many thousand people hauling a rock, you're going to move it. I mean, mathematically, you can figure that out. But the big question is, you know, why are people trying to do something that is so obviously incredibly difficult? Okay, I mean, and even modern engineers are looking at this going like, wow, you know, why would you even do this? And what I always maintain is whoever was doing this and how they did it, it was easy for them. Okay, it wasn't some very difficult thing to do, but something they could quite easily do. And that means, and let's forget about quarrying and cutting the stones, but just lifting them and moving them. And in my mind, that really takes some kind of levitation, anti-gravity, turning the stones weightless somehow, which could be with sound. And acoustics is possible, perhaps earth energies, your anti-gravity ray that just holds them and then moves them into place. Another way, here's how a modern construction company would do it, I imagine. They would build giant cranes, like in a dockyard or something. And those cranes would lift the stones up, drop them down.
But how do you retrieve your cable that you were holding the stone?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I don't think it was done that way. No, I mean, it's in my mind, it's some form of levitation, anti-gravity, of making these stones weightless. And rather than it being done by so many thousands of people huffing and puffing and pulling, just a few people could have done this, in theory. I mean, you know, but of course modern archaeologists, I mean, they just can't perceive that or fathom that anybody could have ever done that. So, I mean, it does remain a mystery, but the mainstream archaeologists will, I mean, they're like, well, it's, you know, they wanted to do it and they made a big effort and they did it.
So let me throw out another question. You can see here in particular how the seams are even a foot or more deep in, whereas the ashlars and the other megalithic construction, even in Cusco and some of the other sites, this goes in a tiny bit.
Just a little bit.
And I've only seen a few places around the world where it looks a little bit more like this. What do you make of that? Not conventional wisdom.
Well, and that is going back fairly far, but maybe like 6 inches. See, once you go beyond the face here, it bevels out.
Right. But
and
it's still quite deep.
Yeah, it is still
compared
quite
to the
deep.
other megalithic sites.
And when you have a chance at certain places here, and this isn't a bad one because the rock's pulling away here, look how straight and clean those cuts are.
Freezing cold water coming down from the Andes. This is Andes meltwater probably. At this place called Incahuasi, 3,800 meters above sea level. Lots of examples of different building styles here. Very much what is known to be Inca. Which actually is more like this kind of stuff. And then what is quite possibly an older style here. Yeah. What? More sophisticated, quite possibly older. And then
Acueducto.
oh yes, okay. It's an aqueduct coming down through here.
Aparece abajo allá.
Yeah, underneath, joining the river. But the aqueduct seems to be focused on this amazing cutout stone here. again, what Jesus Gamara of Cusco would call Hanenpacha culture, the oldest of the cultures to exist and the most sophisticated cultures, thousands of years prior to Inca times. In Peru, where you find megalithic structures like this stone removal example, claimed to be Inca, highly unlikely. How would they have done it? Why would they have done it? This is more akin to Inca construction. Possibly this, but not necessarily. But it's also where we find the ancient builders' work using polygonal stones, in some cases cubes, perfectly, almost, fitting together without the use of mortar of any kind. Then that's also where more and more, as time goes on, we're also finding elongated skulls. And this is a case in point. I didn't put this up here as a prop. This was here. Clearly it was found in the area. And someone has made a shrine to it, and people are still making offerings, which I just did, in the form of tobacco. But with what's left of this ancient structure, clearly this person was found here. And this person has, excuse me, ancestor, an elongated cranium. Probably done by binding. Maybe not, but most likely. You can see there's some kind of damage in the back that could very well have been the result of disease resulting in the death of this person, but maybe trepanation here. The interesting two holes that we find in the Paracas skulls are found here. They seem to be natural, which your brain or your skull doesn't have. So we put him back in his shrine here. But it's great because here in the highlands of Peru, on the way to Cusco, we found not only megaliths, but we've also found elongated skulls. Two of them go together. As the sun goes down, even more ruins in the background here up on top of this hill. But we're losing daylight, and that's the end of the show for now. Thank you for watching. This is what a normal human skull looks like, as you can tell. Compare it with this, which is a elongated skull from Paracas, Peru, and another. In fact, there are more than 40 elongated skulls in the Paracas History Museum, located in the small seaside town of Chaco on the Paracas Peninsula. So if you find them strange, I have something even stranger to show you. And it looks to some degree similar to what is called the Star Child skull, which Lloyd Pye was the caretaker of for about 12 years, up until his death a year ago. So here is a photograph of the skull. Notice the very strange shape of the eye sockets, the size of them. And even better yet, here is the skull itself, which we will now examine. So again, as you can see, the eye sockets for the size of the skull are huge, but they're also very shallow. And where the optic nerve enters the head is different than a normal skull. And actually what we'll do is we'll compare this side by side with a normal skull. So here we have a normal human skull probably much like what yours looks like. And then let's compare it with this one. Here are the nostrils of a normal skull. You see how they go straight through to the, because they are air passages. And then this one. If they're air passages, they're not in the same place as this. Then as I slowly rotate it this way, where the teeth and gums are, very strange. It doesn't appear to even have teeth. And yes, I should be wearing gloves, but the museum ran out of them. In terms of plates and sutures, it has the normal number that a normal skull has. There's also this strange cut mark in it, which looks very ancient. And that is where the occipital is. Unfortunately, that part of the skull is missing. And again, we rotate it. Also, what is this very strange thing here? Again, you're looking at the underside of the skull. And these prong-like things coming out. And this area here is called the fontanelle. Now, when a child is younger than 2 years, this is open. It finally closes at about, I believe, 20 to 24 months. So that means that this individual is older than 2 years. But the main question is, are we even looking at a human being? Could it be an example of hydrocephalus? Or are we looking at a different species altogether? So if you'd like to visit and see the skull, you'll have to come, obviously, to the Paracas History Museum in Chaco, Paracas Peninsula, 4 hours south of Lima, and Senior Juan Navarro, the owner of the museum, will show it to you. We are on the Capacñan, which is the royal road of the Inca that stretches all the way to the middle of Argentina and Chile. I'm presently in Cusco, and what we're looking for today is the quarry, or in Spanish called the cantera, of the site which is megalithic called Sacsayhuaman, which has some of the largest megalithic stones in the world, but definitely in the Americas. Some of these stones, finished, weigh 125 tons. This is called the Temple of the Moon, and notice that parts of it have been cut out, as if blocks were taken out. This is not the quarry of Sacsayhuaman, and may not be a quarry whatsoever. So this is where we find the limestone, which is what makes up the big zigzag wall of Sacsayhuaman. Most of the other stone in the area is called andesite, and it's harder. So this is where we break away from the Inca road that goes again to the middle of Argentina and Chile, heading southward, obviously, and into the quarry area. So you can see where large pieces have been cut out and large pieces of the limestone still in place. Now, some people have suggested that the stones, especially the giant ones, which are up to 125 tons, were brought from the Sacred Valley of Peru, which is like 70 kilometers away. But I've never seen a limestone deposit there. Here, this is all limestone. It's a really solid outcrop. But whether the Inca themselves could have actually harvested giant blocks of stone like that and moved them the 3 kilometers to their present location at Sacsayhuaman is questionable, to say the least. It's possible that some of the really big pieces came out of here, but there's a lot of kind of junky rock adhered to solid limestone. So possibly from another distant hillside like this one over here, where the stone appears to be more homogeneous, or even up here. But clearly what we want to try to find are tool marks of some kind in the bedrock, and that would give us an indication of how the stone was extracted. The tightness of the fit of the stones in the wall at Sacsayhuaman are to some degree close to perfect. In some cases you can't fit a human hair in between, so it's not a question of just harvesting big blocks lying on the ground and rolling them 3 kilometers and then shaping them, because the Inca had bronze tools. How could they shape stones of that scale and move them to such a level of precision? That's the big conundrum that conventional archaeology, they don't address it. They don't respond to my emails. Boo-hoo. So we're told from our local guides that this is the actual quarry itself. Let's see if we can find some tool marks to prove that. So you see the amount of weathering on this stone. I'm no geologist, but I find it hard to believe that this is 600 or 700 years worth of weathering. Okay, so I don't see any tool marks. So that either means we're at the wrong location, or this stone weathers so quickly that the tool marks are eroded, which I doubt. Or that the quarrying was done so long ago that it was done before the Inca ever existed by a culture that had lost ancient high technology. So I'm personally going for option number 3. I don't see how with Bronze Age tools you can extract multi-ton blocks of stone and then move them over this very rough terrain, only 3 kilometers, but still 3 kilometers. And then how you can erect the stones and fit them into place so that they have a fit again whereby you can't fit a human hair in. And some of the biggest stone is 29 feet tall. 12 feet of it is underground, 17 feet above ground, and it surgically precision fits into the other megalithic blocks. Even the Inca themselves, when the Spanish first arrived in Cusco and saw Sacsayhuaman, which was greater than anything they had experienced in Spain, they asked the Inca, "Did you do this work?" And the Inca said, "No, this was here when we got here." And that shows that not only Sacsayhuaman, but also Cusco, the city itself, is thousands of years older than the Inca and was constructed by a civilization with very advanced high technology. Engineers today can't figure out how Sacsayhuaman could be constructed even using modern tools. So here we actually do see tool marks done with some kind of stone hammer. This stone has been protected from the weather, but this could be an example of the Inca extracting stone to do other works of a smaller scale at Sacsayhuaman. Okay, as an epilogue, our guide says that there are a number of quite massive caves here which are not natural, and he believes that this is where the very big megalithic blocks were removed. But how they were possibly removed without shattering them into pieces is a big question. And whether the Inca had the capability with bronze and stone tools, hammers and chisels, to do such a thing is questionable.